Mine says
The
should be
view
for
counts would go
every.
up.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Not Us Podcast, hosted by two sisters, myself, Angela, and that hooligan over there, my sister, Sam. It is a podcast all about change and choices and celebrating all the messy bits in between. And Angela stumbled along her script because she's so excited that we have a guest. But before we introduce you, we are not licensed doctors, therapists, gurus, or witches. The opinions, stories, and views expressed in this episode are our own for entertainment only and subjected to change. Swearing is likely, and today we might definitely be swearing. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Woohoo!
Yay. I mean, I said that hooligan over there, meaning my sister, but there are two hooligans on my screen as far as I can see.
We both answered to it.
Welcome, Brett. It's so good to have you here with us.
So good to be here. You guys are doing some cool stuff.
Thank you.
So, we have Brett Michael Innis in the house with us today. And for those who don't know who he is, he's a best-selling author and award-winning filmmaker, originally from Johannesburg, but now lives in Cape Town. He's known for writing novels and making films and TV that actually get noticed and win awards rather than just sitting in someone's Vimeo queue. Brett, this is straight from ChatGTP, and you've been cited, bruh. So that means that you've made it big time. Born in Johannesburg in 1983, he trained at AFDA, South Africa's big name film school, with a scholarship courtesy of the National Film and Video Foundation. After school, he spent years doing documentary work across Africa before pivoting into dramatic film and writing. His debut novel, was it The Story of Rachel de Beer? Was that your first book?
That was the first novel, yeah.
And your second book was Rachel Weeping.
Yeah.
Cool stuff, which became your first feature film called
That was
Sync.
it.
There you
go. ChatGPT knows.
His first feature as director and writer was Sync, which premiered at the Atlanta Film Festival and earned multiple SAFTAs. Brett has also done an adaptation of the iconic South African novel Phyllis II, which Angela cried multiple times in.
Cried more in a movie in my life.
Yes.
Snot and trana, as we say in South Africa.
Yes.
And then you branched into a mockumentary comedy with Darren's Gym. And last year was quite a bumpy year. You released Mockumentaries, Khaki Fever.
Khaki.
It's a mouthful.
Khaki.
That's how we like it.
For a long time.
Khaki Fever. Khaki Fever. And producing credits on The Heart is a Muscle, which is doing some really great stuff internationally.
Yeah, it was South Africa's submission to the Academy Awards. If you look on the floor, I just dropped a name there. But yeah, very, very cool little year for us in 2025.
But to us, Brett is just our stunning little cousin. Who is
that blonde boy who's a great dancer, by the way. I think that's when I first met Brett. We were giving it some Arthur Murray. For those of you who don't know Arthur Murray, like the classic dance kind of academy learning.
Yeah.
He's got some moves in those hips.
We were trained from young. The aunties and uncles used to make Samantha, myself, and Wendy dance for them. I think there's a photo. They all look like smokers at that stage.
Dance.
There was no TV. Mnet was too expensive.
So welcome to our podcast, Brett. And he's here today because, among many things, Brett is, as we said, he's a writer and a director.
Did you just say Brett? Did you?
Which is what she would call me. Yeah. Brett the Brat.
Brett the Brat is, he's a writer, but he's also an advocate of, I would say, most marginalized communities, including women, trans people, and you have some interesting point of views. And our podcast is all about change, choice, and the messy bits. And no one has lived that more loudly and proudly as you have, Brett. So that's why we have you on the pod today. But this is not the first time, Brett, that you and Angela have had a camera watching a conversation between the two of you. Do you remember about 20 years ago, Angela interviewed you?
I do, and I remember the topic and the answers. And I think if Angela and Brett from what was it, 12 years ago could see themselves now, they'd be praying hard for us.
I
Right.
forgot about it. I have short-term memory for a very good reason, because you can only cope with the sins of your past for so long. And that reminded me of this yesterday. I was like, what? Oh my God. Yes, we did. I did interview you.
I was working at a church. I was deep into the purity culture thing, and Angela was producing a segment on purity culture and remaining chaste until we got married. And I rallied a bunch of horny teenagers who had all committed to the silver ring thing. And we gave our argument for why we were resisting the temptation. I even remember who was the boom swinger, Angela.
Oh, did you not? Do you not? I don't remember.
A certain lady friend who went on to feature in your life a bit later.
Oh gosh, you must be careful who you let swing your boom.
You're going to have to fill us in because Angela cannot remember. And I'm like, no, Ange, but wasn't there a conversation? Like one of the questions was like, okay, so you are not going to have sex, and then on your wedding night, you're going to just be the most amazing lover. And of course, Angela and myself giggled about that in judgment, because we are those kind of girls. But Brett, maybe you want to bring us up to speed in terms of where you were at there and how your life has kind of evolved since those purity rings.
Yeah, I mean, I was working at a church, basically training to be a pastor. I had fully drunk the Kool-Aid. I was on the evangelical train. Angela was also part of that world. I think you were you had a bit more of a head start to leaving it than me. So I think when you were doing the interviews, you were on your way out. I was still deep in it. But yeah, at 29, I guess it took about 2 years to get to the 29 point, but ripped the Band-Aid off, quit working at the church, left the faith. I no longer have any affiliation or belief in the Christian belief system, and came out and started dating men. And true to the interviews that we did, I only lost my virginity at 30. So I was on that purity train all the way. You get some Christians who are kerfuffling on the side and, sit in church and it's like, no, we're holding pure. But hey, this boy can stick to a promise. And that's what I did. And when I ripped the Band-Aid off and threw it away, it was a thing of being like, wow, I wasted 10 years of my life that I could have been having sex and doing things for a belief system that... Oh, I made up for lost time.
So you said that choice actually started, or the thinking around that choice started about 2 years before 29. How did it come about?
Look, I'd always known I was attracted to men. I think the context we were raised in, be it our family, we were raised going to an evangelical school and having a strong belief system around that. So it was kind of just put into a place like, sure, you may feel these things, but it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So you were kind of taking all these desires and putting to the side in a context that was promising you that if you just have enough faith, it's something that God can fix, or maybe it's your cross to bear and you just push through with it. And I think I was pretty strong on that. I'd even say, I would dare to say even possibly homophobic in the approach of being like, well, if I'm holding out, why is everyone else not, in terms of people struggling with this or who are leaving the church? And I was a hardline evangelical around it. But I'd say from like 26 to 27, I just started asking questions on faith, questions that were also prompted by just watching friends get married and realizing like, yeah, this thing, I'm not attracted to women. I can fall in love with a woman, but sexually, I'm just not attracted to them. And I think the longer you sit with yourself, the more time you spend asking uncomfortable questions. And I think what was interesting for me is that my deconstruction of faith happened at the same time as my deconstruction on my sexuality. And some people are able to arrive at a point where they can be a Bible-believing Christian or a Christian and still be queer or gay. I wasn't. And I think my deconstruction of faith came first, where I literally just asked myself the question one day. And it was a question I was quite scared to ask, but it was one that basically went, if someone presented the Bible to me now with no context of this is the word of God, this is Christianity, what questions would I ask to prove that it was the word of God? And I started asking them. And when the answers fell really short, I was like, well, if I can have doubts and question marks around this, what else can I have doubts around? It's a really disorientating experience. Your perception on reality, eternity, everything suddenly is in a state of flux. For me, it was leaving employment, it was leaving community, Yeah, it was a really crazy space to find myself in. And then also going into a context where we deal with homophobia as queer people all the time. So you don't know, are you going to be completely shunned by the people that love you? Fortunately, my parents, immediate family were just like absolutely incredible towards me. I remember telling Sammy I had my list of people I needed to tell before like an email went out, and we were at Sun City. White Brett is busy hiding in the shade of an umbrella because these Arabs love to burn themselves in the sun by the pool. And I was like, had a little side moment with Samantha, and I was like, oh yeah, just, I've come out. And she didn't process it at all. I don't even know what you think I said.
No, you said to me, the words that you said to me was, I had my own bit of drama this year. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah? I was like,
And then
I just got married. Brett had filmed our wedding. And
yes.
this was 4 months later. And he said to me, I've had my own bit of coming out drama this year.
Yes.
And it just did not connect for me. Then he was like, let me break this down in baby language for you, Sam. But it was just so out of context. And then it was like, oh, you're coming out. I was like,
so I was burning in the sun, trying to pour my heart out to her, but she caught on eventually.
And if you tell me anything, I want details, descriptions,
Oh, yes.
like how to go down. But I mean, as you were saying, there were a couple of cocktails in, sunning ourselves on the high felt, and then out of nowhere, I've had my own coming out drama. Of course, then Brett had to give me all the details around that. And you had said at the time that our wedding was significant for you in terms of like cementing whether you were on the right path or not.
Yeah, I think for me, where I was in that stage of also just deconstructing faith, I kind of used it as a litmus test to be like, I have a strong intuition, a strong moral code. And I said to myself, I want to stand in this wedding. And if I feel even a hint of guilt or shame or conviction that this is evil, Holy Spirit, speak to me. Like I was still very much in the space of talking to God and saying like, God, you're not a God of leaving people questioning or in a space where there's confusion. If you believe in God, I believe God brings clarity. It's not a space, and that's what scripture's there for if you go according to those beliefs. So I said, convict me, tell me that I'm wrong, that I have to go back and work at a church. I'm so willing to do that. And to stand there and watch it and just feel love, grace, to not just feel like, oh, this has been tolerated by God, but actually feeling like, oh no, this is two people that love each other, making a union. And yeah, out of that, I was like, well, there you go. I kind of had the affirmation that I needed. But then I think it's also just watching, like, even just both of your lives, watching the courage. Like Sammy was, I guess, most of my life, I knew where she fell in stuff, but watching Angela deconstruct faith and make those bold choices. And I think when it was happening, when I was so deep in my faith, there's this thing of recognizing that, oh no, she sees the truth that she sees in herself, the truth that I see in myself. And she's making this choice, and it scares the hell out of me. I'm probably only going to have that conversation with myself in 2-3 years time. But you watch and you see how people treat you, how they talk about you, positive and negative, and to see the love that was extended from, like my mom, towards both of you. That becomes little notes that you put in the back of your head to be like, okay, they can be safe places I can possibly also reveal this side of myself to. But everyone's journey is one at their own pace. And yeah, I think that's why social media actually became such a big part of also watching queer people live their lives, because the only narratives we were exposed to were the extremes and often linked to the AIDS crisis or just parts of queerness, which I was like, I'm not that guy. But to see so many versions of queerness existing was just the absolute gift to be like, I can be myself, whatever that looks like, and grow into whatever that looks like.
You know, I was telling Angela yesterday that I nominate myself as the family trailblazer.
Which one is something worth aspiring to?
Black sheep, trailblazer, I don't know.
You decide how you label it. Some people might say
it's Sam's fault, basically. It's all Sam's fault.
She made us all gay as she was slipping that in the Oros.
In the Oros. Brett,
we were just jumping in there. We just saw the trailer for the new Masters of the Universe with He-Man. And he's like in this harness and a speeder. And I'm like, you know what, actually, mommy,
You should
You're
play
letting me
up.
still not
Well,
tasted yet.
I like strong female characters. So for me, it was She-Ra.
Brett, there's two things. I think for those who are listening, who may be of Christian faith or any faith really, this conversation isn't just about Christianity. What comes to me, Brett, as you speak, is asking questions. And I think even as kids, certain societies, and certainly growing up in South Africa, was very much a stop asking so many questions.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to just sit in the room and watch. And if we are taught to ask questions from when we are young, then when things come up that is polarizing or can be polarizing, then at least if we know how to ask questions, we don't necessarily stay in those situations as long as we did in our lives. The same thing happened to me when I started moving away from, and both of us happened to be in the church and in ministry in some form, and then moving our choice of sexual partner shifted as well. But I remember being in a hotel room in Taipei. I think I was on a production of Cats, and I had the same thing. I was watching all of these people of other faiths doing it so passionately, the same way as we would in our culture, and also making choices around that. And same thing, asking like, God, admitting that I didn't necessarily believe one specific thing and saying, but please don't let me die if I'm getting it wrong. Like, please just show me if this is the only way, I don't want to like die and burn. I mean, there's the fear already, but kind of that risk of taking that chance and exposing yourself in such a way, you cannot believe the vulnerability. So for anyone who happens to be listening to this, and it sounds like the most daunting thing you could ever do in your life is question the way you've been brought up and feel like it isn't a good fit for you. It's okay to feel completely and utterly panic-stricken, like you could die if you make the wrong choice. But life isn't actually quite that black and white. Like we get to choose and choose again and choose again. And I'm sure for you, Brett, as a creative, when you're creating a movie or writing a script, you constantly make a choice and then go, nah, that went this direction. Actually, I'm going to make another choice now. Yes, I don't know if that speaks to you at all.
It really, and what's been interesting for me is like the commitment I made to myself is that I always want the courage to set fire to what I've spent a decade building. And maybe it works in decades, but it's not to be like whatever I walked away from now, this is the right way. And I'm going to be this version of myself forever. People often use this as a jab to say, oh, you've changed, as like a bad thing. I'm like, oh no, you're meant to change. Like you're meant to grow. You're meant to be better. You're going to go through stuff. Like all these things need to happen. So I hope that I have the courage to set fire to the life I have crafted. If it is not serving, to say not serving me makes it seem a bit self-indulgent or selfish, but if it's become like this toxic, oppressive thing, I hope I can set fire to it and then use the bricks that survive to build a new life. And who knows, it might even be something that in a roundabout circle brings me back to a starting point that I had. What's been so interesting with us, two of the scripts I'm writing now, they have very deep explorations of faith and have asked me to go in, like I'm literally listening to worship music that I haven't listened to in 10 years, which would have been quite triggering for me in terms of like, oh, are you regressing or reminding me of a time? But to actually step back and be like, wow, this music actually brought such comfort to me when I was in a really tricky space. What if I can use it again now to bring comfort to myself, to bring comfort to others? So I think I just want to lead with curiosity. And what I did notice with my creativity is when I had come out and when I had actually taken that bold step to do it quite outwardly, my creativity just went into another level, because what I didn't realize is that I was censoring myself in my writing on the fear that I would out myself through my scripts. You don't actually realize how much censorship you put on yourself when you have a secret that could destroy you. And for all of us, it was a secret that could destroy us.
Yeah, I love that, because where you're stifling yourself, any part of yourself, in any part of ourselves where we're not being who we truly be because we think we need to edit ourselves for the world, we stop everything. You can't only stop little bits of yourself. You're stopping flow. Yeah.
And if there are two people that I know who live boldly, and by that I mean if you're doing something, you're going 100% in, and it's the two of you. I will still kind of be as palatable as I can with my choices. But the two of you, I mean, Angela, we've gone through her various names, various iterations of herself. She's been married 100 times. It's full on in. And you both are like that.
Yeah, I think it's in the nature of being artists and performers. I mean, attention hungry personas. My mom actually told me, and it became this beautiful picture I used also in therapy, is like, as a child, you think I'm white now. I was neon white when I entered the world with these ones. But my mom's a really shy person. She just doesn't want tons of attention. And she's busy pushing this lens flare of a baby who's kind of just learned how to like sit up and talk. And I would just be calling out, reaching out to everyone to say hello and come and talk to me. And everyone would want to stop and like talk, which was just the worst thing she wanted. But I'm just a persona that loves to interact with people, to shine. I think so much of our journeys in life, and then as artists, almost, or don't know if I'd say mirroring it, but pulling apart from it, is in our lives, we were being told suppress and hide these things. And this was a place where we could be seen and loved and entertained. When you entertain people, be it as the performer on the stage or the person whose words created that, it is a spiritual high that I cannot describe to anyone else. It is pure creation. Beautiful.
Yeah. I used to say that about, or I do say that about performing. When you're completely in that flow, it feels like meditation because you're in the zone. You know what, you can clock what's going on around you, but it is this incredible flow. It's like being a medium of some sort.
And truly reflects creation. Like if you go to Genesis, it says the word became flesh. Out of nothing, something became. And I remember with my first film, sitting in the cinema at the first screening with about 500 people watching, and having this real moment of like, this was an idea in my head. This didn't exist. And then it became pages, and then it became people and employment. And now all of a sudden it's an emotional experience, and I'm watching people cry. It is a transcendent channeling, a mediumship in many ways.
Maybe a question for both of you is, where do you get the courage to actually pursue this passion that you have? I mean, you could have chosen a more generic, like a proper job, but where did you get the courage and the self-belief that you could really rise to the top of your game? Is it something that you just always knew, or?
If you asked me when I was a kid what I was going to do, I was going to be a nurse or a forensic psychiatrist. But I like to
I was going to be an actress, a lawyer, a criminologist, or a psychologist. Except I was too shy to audition.
Storytelling, see. But I do love stories, and I grew up with stories and storybooks. But I think, it's like every little girl, you dream of singing and dancing, because that's the stuff that storytelling is made of. And I think I met the right people at the right time, because it's not my most natural thing to be a performer, because I am quite introvert and quite creatively, I'm quite shy in a lot of ways. I've learned to present more extrovert, and I just happen to have some talent that allowed me to express my creativity in that way. But it's the same as you, Brett. It's from a deep desire to tell stories and to move people, and the thrill of having the skill set that you have all merge together and come alive and create something. It's quite indescribable.
Yeah, I think some people, there's like a desire to be seen. And I definitely think there is a layer of that within us, that out of 100 people, you stand out. So it means where you feel maybe a bit shitty in yourself, you have either this talent, a voice, or a performance, or a script, which makes you rise above. So there's a level of ego, I think, attached to that. I also think there's a layer of, definitely within myself, it's about connecting people to an experience. I love doing pranks for the same reason. It creates an experience. And if I'm with a group of people, guaranteed I'm the first person to start connecting the group and laughter and be the first on the dance floor. I think so much of that is linked to possibly people pleasing, knowing that, if you take that first step, everyone else is shit scared to do it, but go take that first step and you can actually make a moment that is really special for everyone. And at its core, you'll be respected and loved for it as well. So I think those are all layers within there. Stepping out into actually pursuing the arts, I think there's a level of naivety needed. There's a level of overt confidence or extroverted confidence kicking through there. Like, if I often look back now and I'm like, I've had some really good successes, but I'm like, cheapers, the cost that this often comes at is not worth the rejections and the stress that often comes with it. But when it works, oh my gosh, it's like chasing a drug high. It truly, it's truly got that.
So I can understand naivety and talent will get you to a point. But what keeps you going back? I read somewhere the other day about the difference between people that have got longevity in the pop world is their ability to actually push out the noise. And the person was saying, like, once you singing in front of a crowd, it's a high like no other high. But it's about whether or not your nervous system can sustain that. And that's why you have these one-hit wonders. So my question to the two of you is, what keeps you going back? Because, Ange, you were a leading actress in a country that really does not provide the right kind of infrastructure to be a leading actress for many decades. And Brett, same with you. You're in the same country where the arts are not well funded. So what keeps you going back? And how do you keep the fear of rejection or just the fear element at bay? Or is that part of what drives you?
I think it's part of it. I had the worst possible performance anxiety while I was playing some of my most incredible female roles. I remember during Evita, I was exhausted and a whole bunch of things came together, and I, on stage, as I got to Don't Cry for Me Argentina one night, the whole stage emptied in this particular production. The stage circled round and I was alone at a mic, and I started singing, "It won't be easy." I sang that song more times than any other song in my career. I did not know what the next word was.
Wow.
The words were that full performance anxiety, panic hit my entire body. And in my head, it's like, it won't be easy. When I try to, I mean, I'm literally fucking just,
Oh, that's horrible.
and I just turn around at the mic, walk off, and then just like collapse in the wings from complete exhaustion. That's not the hard part. The hard part is then when you're in your dressing room, they say, "Miss Kellyanne, how long before you can go back on?" And you've got 5 minutes to get your shit together so that you can get back on that stage because your cover's not ready or whatever it might be. And then go and do that for the rest of the run of the show and do tapping and neurolinguistics and have tranquilizers and like every tool and technique you can think, come off the stage and cry after every single scene because you're so scared to go back on. That was like my reality. And then I had to learn some tools very quickly because it nearly stopped me performing. And anyone who's in a performance or creative environment like that where you have to show up can experience that, particularly when you're a little higher up in your game. So I think for me, it was just the beauty of creating. I just kept going because I kept getting offered these amazing characters to create and to play with. And that was my drive the whole time until I had to make other choices in my life. I had to adult up in other areas, need to make some other choices. But it was just still telling another story, creating another character, and the magic and the power of that have probably kept me there.
Yeah, I would say the same reason someone goes back to an abusive partner, which it sounds heavy and morbid, but it's love. Love is why people stay in those relationships. Fear often, but love. The idea that when the sun shines on you from that kind of relationship, it is gorgeous. That person is passionate, they're with you, you're the apple of their eye, but when the sun is not shining on you, oh, it hurts you. And I've had to learn how to have actually really strong boundaries, and I don't get it right with film and how much of it, the time I give to it emotionally and just out of my schedule to be like, even this December to take 3 weeks off. I haven't done that in years because, I mean, Angela knows the panic well and constantly questioning, like, I wouldn't be a failure if I was to pivot in 2 years' time and do a completely different career. In fact, that might be the very thing that I need to survive. There's no mystery why so many of the artists we love take their lives or completely burn out and become wrecks. And it's because it is an abusive relationship that you're engaging with and an important relationship. And even when we look at abusive, toxic relationships, they can, if boundaries are put in place, or I'm not saying for all of them, but they aren't inherently going to always be evil. there's going to be incredible times of good and beauty. And that's what people stick around for. The chance that, oh, maybe next time this role is just going to be around a bit longer, or this film opportunity, and I'm not going to have to worry about paying my bills or sitting for a year without any work coming through, because those valleys are really low. But yeah, when the sun is shining, oh, it's gorgeous. It's exquisite.
God, you just basically unpacked. That was like a year's worth of therapy sessions for me in 1 minute to explain so many things in my life.
I really appreciate, just take the rose tint glasses off and call it for what it is. Because often we say, well, an abusive, toxic relationship, it's all shit. And I was going to say, okay, so you're trauma bonded. That's what it is.
Pretty much.
But you are correct. And I think it's not only in your field, it's even in corporate. It's the same thing. When it's great, but then there's also it has to go down. So you have to have those ebbs and flows, those highs and lows. Brett, your comment about courage to set fire to what you've built over the last decade, where does that courage come from? Is there a particular person? Is there a particular memory that you can think of that sowed that seed?
I don't know if I think the courage is linked to, and you and I have had this chat offline, that the pain that you're in is often so unbearable that you're forced to have courage. Courage isn't feeling brave. It's not like there's an orchestra behind you, like as you run in ready to go. Actually, it is a really horrible, quiet, insidious feeling where you're just like, I cannot do this any longer. If I stay here, I'm going to die. And if I want to live, I've got to jump. So you jump. And I've definitely got examples of people in my life in terms of people who've actually not had the courage to do stuff. And then often looking at that and specifically in perhaps coming out, noticing men who I'm like, you're in your 50s now and you have clearly denied something about yourself, and do I want that for my future? And to then have it be like, this is so unbearable sitting within myself, I take that leap. So I think within the arts as well, we all get off on the like ingenue discovered out of obscurity and suddenly there. I think the latest ones are the heated rivalry boys who kind of had no careers and all of a sudden they're there. That's such a rare story. Yeah. It's actually very unrealistic to feel that's going to be your story. But the courage is showing up small and just continuing to push through. And like when I heard Angela had moved into corporate, I was like, well fucking done. I was so proud of you. I was like, really? You have done the best thing for yourself. Like your sanity, your stability for life. Like you've had this exquisite body of an artist and now you carry on as an artist in another way. But it's almost like we think, oh, I was a headliner as this one thing. And I have to basically do it until I die. Then I'm a success.
Brett, this is one of the interesting things Sam and I spoke about and why we wanted to have you on here, because we speak about women's things that come up around changing and choices and everything. But sometimes it's really good to get someone else's perspective on how women show up in the world. And you've written some of the most incredible female characters. And if you hadn't written them, you've directed them. And you're used to working with female actors and observing women in all of their flow. And now you're married to a man.
You come from a family of
strong women.
Strong women. Strong, opinionated woman. Does it make sense as to why you've got a husband?
He's a man.
Nature and nurture. Yeah, it links, I think, being really surrounded by how many women is it that are older than me? There's probably like 7 or 8 in the immediate circles there. And coming into our family gatherings, it was like the loudest is the one that gets heard. So we definitely aren't known for shrinking violets. You'll see the uncles like quiet somewhere, but the aunties holding court. But I was always close to my mom. So I remember, don't give Cynthia fiction. Don't give her fantasy. She wants real life trauma stories. Like that is her rule. It's a book she's reading, the movies she's watching. And those were the films that I was watching. It was always some woman escaping something or standing up to some man. So I think a lot of that just created an awareness for myself that there is a very different experience for women. And as a male storyteller, I also think that and it comes with a huge disclaimer. But if you do your research, I believe the outsider is the more interesting perspective on an experience. So I don't think me writing a white male gay story is going to be as interesting as if a black female was perhaps to tell the story, because the outsider is not held hostage by sacred cows, by their own experience, by the burden of representation. They can actually be quite objective if they do their research. And so many straight white men have fucked that up. So like I put that in the mix as well. They've reduced women to caricatures, and their only value is that of mother or a partner. And I think having been exposed to just teaching and literature that says otherwise, it prompted me to tell stories about women, getting the perspectives of women into the mix. And then also just, it was actually interesting when I was directing Phyllis Akant, one of the ladies who was working in art department, a 70-year-old white lesbian Sangoma, who is a custodian of a large area of land, in spiritual custodian in the Eastern Cape. And she just came up to me, and she had been watching me direct, and she said, I really feel I need to tell you, your power as a director is that you allow the balance of the male and female energy to move within you. So I don't believe gender determines whether the masculine or feminine can exist in a body. That's why I think beautiful trans bodies are able to house both energies within themselves. And I think we have all of them in us. It's what is the dominance at the time that we step out into the world, and what do we nurture and grow? So I think the journey as a gay man often is, how do you prove that you are man enough, which means suppress the feminine, but to have had actually the space to rather be like, oh no, who cares if my voice sounds feminine, or have a reaction that's feminine, or a thought that is traditionally feminine. Like all these things can actually dwell in a body that looks like this. I mean, I basically look like a Trump supporter if I shave my head, but I can be the biggest ally to a woman that I can be.
I love that about the comment that you use, that you have capacity for both male and female, masculine and feminine. And we've spoken about this previously, sis, and we speak about that quite regularly. And I think especially in terms of the path that we've both been on, it's not about whether you are butch or feminine, but it's really about embodying the masculine, which is more about leading, protecting, the initiator, and then the feminine, which is more receptive and being one with source, etc. And like you said, we have both in us. It's just which one needs to show up at the appropriate time.
Yeah,
I really love
I'm actually
that.
working on a really interesting script now, which is looking at male, female, science, nature, and the idea of the world's kind of been run by men forever. The masculine energy, it's linear. The feminine energy is circular, it's seasonal. In your bodies exist 4 seasons, once a month. Men do not understand that. We work linearly, but there's wisdom in the seasons. Like when you are in what your version of summer is, you are more productive. And in your winter version, you have to actually be more withdrawn. And I think as we look at gender roles being shifted in the current age, there's a defensiveness coming from men where they feel like the masculine needs to be replaced. And for some women, a feeling of needing to do that, to actually now do both things, but to actually say this is all about balance. The world is currently unbalanced, and it is because the masculine energy is not protecting the feminine energy. If the linear of the masculine is like that and the circle of the feminine is within, the masculine is needed to protect, to hunt, to create structure, but the feminine is needed to create life. And those two things need to be balanced. It's never about replacing one or the other.
So let me ask you a question, because I mean, I love what you're saying. That's the conversations that I want to have, especially with straight men. Like, can we have the conversation that the world is systematically, it's geared to be more for men, the patriarchy. And I'm not of the belief, well, get rid of men. That's not the vibe at all. I think there's space for both, but how do we ensure that women have a leg up as well, so that we are really playing on a equal field? And it's not to say, well, equal means that I need to carry the heaviest box. No, like I'm not structurally built for that. But how do we have that conversation without polarizing each other? And then also, like when we watch MAFS or Married at First Sight, and someone likes a bit of trash TV,
Oh, we
Actually,
love
both of
trash.
us.
Oh, we need it.
Like, where do we find the balance in terms of not minimizing each other to specific roles?
I think it's story. Like, story moves people. There is a reason Christ spoke in parable. He didn't preach. The way they teach doctrine is that Jesus would stand on a hill, recognizing that the thousands that stood before him each come with a very different starting point. And if he gave doctrine, he would maybe speak to 5% and the rest would be alienated. But when you speak in parable, which speaks to the heart, which speaks to emotion, every person places themselves in that story and you meet them where they're at. So to me, if we are able to engage in stories, that's why I don't want to watch stories about people that look like me. Yes, I get the importance of representation, seeing an experience I have for the first time on screen, seeing a gay body on screen for the first time meant the world to me. But I think it's more important for the rest of the world to see that. I know those things exist.
Yeah.
The rest of the world doesn't need it and know it exists. And that's why we did a short film on postnatal depression and infanticide. Nice light topic. And interviewer was asking who should watch it. Is this for like moms like going through the most around this stuff? I was like, absolutely not. If you're a mom struggling with postnatal depression, this is the last thing you should be watching. This is for everyone who has had an opinion on this topic, but has never actually stood for 10 minutes in the shoes of a person walking it, because I can take you there as a storyteller. This film traumatized people. I like literally put them in the shoes of this woman. And on the other side, to have them all say like, I can't judge someone like this. I could see myself in her experience. So to me, if you are a curious human, look for film, TV, books, plays that are of experiences that you're not familiar with, and tell those stories as well so that others can connect with them.
And so, look, my approach is to lock you in a room and to lecture you.
Literally, her approach.
Not lecture, but actually question the comments that you make.
There is a space where that energy is also needed, when I think people are digging their heels in and not backing down, and it needs to be shown that there's flaws in their thinking. Then I say, go in with that energy. But they actually say that when your thoughts or thinking is challenged in conversation, the area in your brain that lights up is the same area that lights up when you're physically attacked. So if your desire is to bring about connection and change, that's not the way to do it. If it's just to win an argument, that's the right way to go about it.
And that's my masculine
I
coming
love it.
out,
We
right?
love an argument.
So how do we engage in storytelling just in normal day-to-day life, in conversation with people that have got a different viewpoint to us?
Look, we're all walking stories and we're all storytellers. So literally just telling you what I did with my day firstly requires vulnerability, because I've got to open myself up and tell you what happened to me. One of the, like, telling family members about homophobia that comes towards us. We can keep it quiet to ourselves, not wanting to draw attention to ourselves, but I've made a very conscious choice to share, like, oh no, this happened to me today. Someone yelled faggot, or we were denied a service about something. Because in sharing that, you're not having an argument around queer rights. I've loved watching, specifically online, female friends who have just been vocal around, this is what happened to me today. I'm not necessarily making any other point other than sharing with you, because you can't argue with someone's experiences. You can argue belief, philosophy, all of that kind of stuff. But if someone tells you, hey, this is what happened to me, you have to be a real asshole if you're going to be like, oh, well, but maybe if you had been wearing jeans, he wouldn't have done that, you know?
One thing is the power of, it's two things here. One thing is the power of words, and you as someone who plays with words knows how powerful that is. And so I suppose as we tell our stories, it's really being aware of how we share things and the words that we use. And so I like what you say in terms of, if you're telling your own story, even if you are clumsy about how you tell it, it's your story, and how that lands and falls. You can't own all of that. You can only own the parts that you can. And as we're speaking, another realization that came to me was, as a performer, I spent my whole life telling other people's stories. And I found, now that I've been a little more in corporate, I realize how few people actually ask you about your story. When you're a performer or you're a leading lady, everyone wants to know your story. And Sam has experienced this with me in a room. Previously, I'd be in a room and be the center of the room because people want to hear your story. But if you're not, people are generally quite selfish. They only actually care about what affects their own world. And I've discovered that I've had to start learning how to tell my story. And maybe that's part of why Sam and I play in this podcast, is also because I don't really know how I feel. I don't really know how to tell you because I'm so used to telling other people's stories. That's the little realization I've just had.
And
I mean, looking at like the episode you guys did on your adoption, and I learned stuff that I had no clue about, because our family as a family unit deals in layers of secrecy, generations of secrecy. So to have this record that exists, I remember texting Gary, I'm like, I don't know if you've watched it yet, but push play, because it's just really awesome to hear these sides of an experience that is so part of the genealogy of our family that I've never heard the parts of, because when we're hanging out, there were never the times to have those conversations. So I really think what you guys are doing with this podcast is doing that.
Thank you. The family loves it. And just one of the comments around that particular was no one feeling it appropriate to ask the questions that Angela would have been happy to express or discuss or just go down that path, but you never know how to approach someone and just ask the question. I just wanted to say another thing. Angela said that she's quite a shy person, and having known her for 26 years, I was like, she's not a shy person. I'm a shy person. But then seeing her in an environment where she doesn't come with this resume of this wonderful actress that she is, it is interesting to see that she is quite reserved. It does make me a little bit like, what do you know who you'd like hanging out with? This is an award-winning musical theater actress. You should be having her sing every single day. She lived in my house, she'd be singing every day on mic.
On repeat.
Obviously, when she got the opportunity to take the mic out of my hand.
Exactly. Oh my God.
Right, maybe just pivoting a little bit. So out of characters that you've either created or you haven't created, or characters that are on television, what are your favorite female characters? And Sis, I'm going to ask you the same question, and I'll tell you who my favorite two are at the moment.
I loved Killing Eve, both of the lead female characters there. I've just forgotten their names, but one of the most bizarre, messy craziness there. And we're currently watching Pluribus, which it's just dropped on Apple TV, from the makers of Breaking Bad. And I think what's so often the case with the desire to see more female narratives on screen, and this is where it's the burden of representation, it becomes this thing of, let's show like the boss bitch, or like a woman who's got her stuff together. She's not just a mom kind of thing. But this pendulum swing meant that often showing messy women or women who don't have their stuff together, like the lead actress in my first film, Sync, Shoki Mokapa, she would say, she's like, you know what, fuck Beyonce. Like, telling me I can have it all, like be a boss, be a performer, have kids, have Jay-Z, be rich. I'm like, I want to lie down. I'm tired. So to have a female character who you are fully invested in Pluribus, and I sent to Nick after episode 3. I really don't like her, but I can't stop watching her.
What about you, Sis?
Oh my gosh, I can only really think of the characters I've played. Those are the ones that have unpacked the most. And that's like how I've chosen my characters. So someone like Norma Desmond is just such a gorgeous character in terms of the layers and layers of stuff that goes on there. I think
Marilyn?
Marilyn, yes. Actually, Marilyn is probably one of my favorite women, just because there were just so many layers of what people see, what they want to see, what they demand to see, but actually what you desire and everything that's happening underneath that and how you're coping with life. She's definitely one of the cooler characters in life.
I'm disappointed that Isabella is not coming through on this.
No, you could give her.
It will not surprise anyone, or it might actually surprise people, but give me an unapologetic, unhinged, fucking walking tornado, and I'm like all for it. So I like the I like the female in Yellowstone, the sister.
Yes.
She is so in her masculine. She is more man than any of her brothers. And then I'm watching Landman at the moment, and Angela. I mean, listen, like It's a
Same
pendulum.
male
You're
writer.
going
Same
anywhere.
male writer.
Exactly. Right.
But I love these, like, they're messy, they own their shit. It's like those strong women who are unapologetic. It does help that they're beautiful as well. So
Oh yeah.
what are we saying? You can be unhinged and crazy as long as you're pretty.
It's from
As
How I
long
Met Your Mother, the crazy beautiful scale. The more pretty you are, the more crazy you can be.
Crazy and beautiful. I used to, whenever I played at one of, because I've done a lot of Andrew Lloyd Webber's lead women, and every time I'd play one, I'd write him and go, oh, this is like the most amazing character. Thank you for creating her, the best ever. And then I do the next one. And I think what I came to realize after writing it to him 5 times, going, oh my God, thank you for creating this one, is that every woman, every human, every person has an interesting story to tell. It's interesting to me, as I'm saying, like, we all have a story to tell. Often what people see is not what's sitting in the background or doesn't tell the whole story. You, someone who creates great stories, how can we craft our own stories and show people who we are bit by bit? Maybe it doesn't all need to happen in one go.
Yeah, I do think the gift of storytelling, we each have something that inherently comes to us as a talent or a gift. I feel fortunate that that has been mine, but there are so many things that you can learn actually how to tell stories. And the first thing is learning how to listen, because how can you tell a story if you've never heard a story before? And I think that's where this medium of podcast, watching movies, reading books, you're watching people tell stories and you're picking up words of wisdom and techniques and ways to do stuff. And telling your story doesn't have to be as grandiose as you're going to write an autobiography or start a podcast or something like that. It can literally be like sharing an experience with someone. And for me, entertainment value is what, and I'm sitting in the company of people who know how to tell a good story. Sure, when you've been with an energy vampire who basically you're just dreaming of when the story could end because they're just on missing all the parts that actually make you connect to it. So I say, if you're watching like stand-up comedians, look at how they craft a joke, especially if it's anecdotal. Like, it becomes a way that you can tell something funny happened to you during the day. And also know that the value of your story, as much as entertainment value is what gets people to like really stay into it, you don't have to tell it well. Like, sometimes your vulnerability is the power, the messiness is the power. And that's what I've really learned when, specifically with public speaking, and I imagine Angela's got a bit of this in her toolkits as well, is that when I'm on stage and I stuff up, I don't pretend it didn't happen. I call it out and include the audience in the thing to be like, oh, wow, I really messed that one up. And then they laugh, it breaks the energy. And then it's just like you feel less performative in how you're doing something. So I think when it comes to sharing your story, and especially if it's one that is quite personal, that's dealing with how you are going through life or making changes, it could possibly be worth spending some time with a therapist, like actually telling them in a very safe and unjudgmental space what you're going through, what your experience has been. I remember the first time telling someone my coming out story, or even just coming out to them. Gosh, now I say it so flippantly. Back then it was like the anxiety before you actually mention it, the wording you want to use. The more you do something, the easier it gets to do.
I love that. So we love a formula on this podcast, or at least I do. So what I took away from that, Brett, was listen, be a good listener. In order to be a good communicator, you have to be a good listener. So listen with intent. Often we listen to answer, listen, take in what someone's saying. Be willing to share from your experience, your vulnerability, make it entertaining. Not that you need to be a clown, but give emotion and vulnerability and that kind of stuff, and then repeat. Do it all again. Yes. You don't have to repeat the story to the same people.
All of us will do that.
But get comfortable telling your story.
Yeah. I've become so comfortable telling people, like, especially if I've known them a while, I'm like, you need to tell me if I've told you the story before, because I'm going to go at it like you have not heard it. And I'm going to feel like an idiot if you don't tell me. So if I start on it, just go like, yeah, you've told me this. And then I'll pivot to something else.
You know what, as you said that, sis, what came to my mind was, what if we listened and giving ourselves permission not to do anything?
Like, so if your partner or your person comes to tell you something, what if we didn't need to solve? We didn't need to give advice. We didn't need to come back with anything. What if literally we were listening and then that would be the end of the story? How would we listen differently then, as opposed to listening to fix? Or
It would be super powerful because we all want to be seen and we all want to be heard.
So true.
Not all of us want to
So
be
true.
fixed. Brett, thank you very much for jumping onto our podcast today. It has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. It always is. And you know that we're not big drinkers, but we have a shot every episode. So thank you very much for your time, Brett.
And
Love being with you guys.
Cheers. Cheers. I swear
Sis, my sick.
Brett, do you want to do a plug or anything before we rush out?
Yeah, the new stuff's getting made, but what I can just say is if you've got Showmax, put play on Khaki Fever. It is such a stupid, happy film that I wrote and produced with my husband, Nick. And it was one of the most streamed local films in Showmax's history. And yeah, push play and just see that. I think in a world with the madness that is going on, to have something that is stupid and just feels like it doesn't take itself seriously, that's going to give it to you.
Thank you for listening to us. You can send us comments, feedback, or suggestions to notaspod@gmail.com. Remember to like, share, and comment. And follow us on social. We now have a TikTok account. That's notus_podcast. And remember to catch us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Until next time, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye now.